It started like any other lockdown drill. We'd practiced them 100 times before. Same hallway, same instructions, same cold, mechanical voice over the speakers. But this time, the door didn't open again. And by the time it did, half of us were gone. This is what really happened to us during a lockdown that no one ever reported. And if your school still uses one of those old underground shelters, you need to hear this. I never thought much about the emergency systems in our school. There were routine drills, sure fire alarms, lockdowns, tornado warnings. All of it felt like a formality, something checked off a list. But that morning, something felt different. It started with the lights. They flickered once during homeroom. No big deal, old building, old wiring. But then they flickered again in second period. And again, like a heartbeat, slowly growing more irregular. The air was unusually still, heavy, as if the whole school was holding its breath. I remember walking down the hallway after second period and noticing something off. Some windows on the east wing were sealed shut with thick, metallic coverings. I hadn't seen them before. Maybe some kind of construction, I figured, but no one had mentioned anything. Then, during third period, it happened. A sound started playing through the loudspeakers, not the usual lockdown tone we'd heard a dozen times before. This one was lower, mechanical, almost analog. It grated like an old reel-to-reel tape struggling to play. And then came the voice. Flat, robotic, unfamiliar. Security Protocol 1984 engaged. Remain in designated locations. External threat confirmed. No one in my class had ever heard of a Protocol 1984. Even our teacher looked confused, frozen in place. The door to the classroom locked with a loud click. The windows, all of them, were suddenly covered with dark metal shutters from the outside. We were sealed in. For a moment, it felt like a prank, like someone hacked the system. But when I looked around, no one was laughing. My heart was pounding in my ears. This didn't feel staged. This felt forgotten, like something that was never meant to be triggered again. Phones stopped working. First the Wi-Fi dropped, then LTE. No signal, no service. Just the strange, repeating announcement every few minutes. Remain in designated locations. Do not attempt to exit. External threat confirmed. I started to notice the temperature dropping. Not drastically, just enough to be unsettling. I pulled my hoodie tighter, but it didn't help. The silence between announcements felt louder than the voice itself. The room felt smaller, like it was slowly tightening around us. After about 20 minutes, I started to feel dizzy. Not from panic, not yet, but from something else. Something I couldn't explain. The buzzing in the lights had a rhythm to it now. A low hum rising and falling like some kind of signal. Some of the students began crying quietly. Others stared blankly ahead. Then came the first sound from the hallway, distant at first, a muffled bang, followed by another, then what sounded like dragging. Slow, heavy, rhythmic. We all froze. Whatever was out there, it didn't walk like a person. It didn't move like anything I'd ever heard before. It scraped the walls, sometimes paused, and then continued. I kept telling myself it was part of the drill, that we were overreacting, that it was some kind of simulation. But deep down, I think I knew. This wasn't a test. And it sure as hell wasn't meant to happen. Time stopped making sense. Without our phones, we had no clocks, no sunlight, just the dull hum of the emergency lighting and the quiet, uneasy shifting of the people around me. No one spoke. We didn't need to. The tension was thick enough to smother any words. That voice kept playing on repeat every few minutes, always the same mechanical monotone. Remain in designated locations. Do not attempt to exit. External threat confirmed. But something changed between the fourth and fifth announcement. The voice glitched. It stuttered for a split second, like a corrupted file, then resumed. But it was enough to unsettle everyone in the room. That voice wasn't just playing from a recording. It was active, adapting. I sat in the far back of the room, closest to the door. Each time the strange thud-thud-drag noise echoed from the hall, it sounded closer. I pressed my ear gently to the door once. Against every instinct, and I swear I heard breathing. Not human breathing, something slower, wet, like lungs that had forgotten how to be lungs. I pulled back fast and almost knocked over a desk behind me. We waited and waited. Minutes bled into an hour, or more. One kid threw up in the corner. Another had a full panic attack. But no one opened that door. No one even dared to touch it. I could see some students trying to calm each other down with gestures, holding hands, squeezing shoulders. I just sat there, staring at the blinking red light above the door. Every few seconds it flashed once, then off. A steady heartbeat. I started thinking about my parents, about how they'd react if they knew we were locked in with whatever was out there. I thought about how I'd laughed off the old stories about our school's basement, how the original building was part of some Cold War-era shelter system. Just urban legends, I thought. Ghost stories. Until now. Then, at what must have been the second or third hour, the sound changed. No more dragging. Instead, tapping. On the lockers. Slow. Deliberate. Like fingernails or claws. 1, 2, 3 taps. A pause. Then again. 1, 2, 3. I thought I was losing my mind until I saw the others react too. We all heard it. And that's when the emergency light flickered twice. Not once, twice. Something was different. Someone whispered a prayer. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. The air got colder again. Almost bitter now. Like winter had crept in through the vents. I don't know how long the tapping lasted, but eventually it stopped. Silence returned. Not a safe kind of silence, the kind that crushes you, that feels intentional. Then came the most terrifying sound of all. A click. The door to our classroom unlocked itself. We all turned at once. No one moved. No one breathed. Just a single red light above the door. Now solid, not blinking. That mechanical voice returned, but now with a different message. Proceed to designated safety zone. Follow illuminated paths. Do not deviate. Illuminated paths? Then I saw it. A narrow strip of light began to glow just outside our classroom, trailing down the hallway, like an old runway light system, pulsing faintly, inviting us, or luring us. I didn't want to go, but staying felt worse. I never wanted to leave that room, even after the door unlocked, even after that low voice gave us permission. No instructions to proceed. I stayed frozen in my seat, hoping someone else would take the lead. But no one did. We were all the same. Terrified kids trapped in a school that suddenly felt like a tomb. Eventually, one of the older students near the front stood up. He didn't say anything, just moved toward the door and cracked it open. The hallway outside was bathed in that eerie pulsing light. A strip running straight down the middle of the floor, stretching as far as we could see. It wasn't the usual emergency lighting. Felt older, like it was never meant to be seen again. One by one, the others began to follow. I waited until the very end. The hallway was dead silent. Lockers loomed on both sides like rusted metal coffins, and the ceiling tiles above us looked warped, stained. I don't remember them ever being like that. Everything felt unfamiliar, like the school we knew had been replaced by a twisted replica of itself. The light led us toward the old wing, the part of the building that had been closed for renovation, since before I even started there. No one ever went down that way. The doors were always locked, and there were rumors, dumb stories about weird noises and strange janitors who only worked the night shift. We always laughed them off. Until now. As we walked deeper, the temperature dropped even more. I could see my breath. The lights above us buzzed erratically, flickering in and out, like they were struggling to keep up. I remember the smell changing too, from dusty air to something metallic, coppery, like blood and rust. Finally, we reached a heavy steel door at the end of the hall. It had no handle, just a keypad that lit up as we approached. And before anyone could react, it slid open on its own with a slow grind, revealing a staircase leading underground. That's when I realized this wasn't an evacuation. It was a descent. The walls of the stairwell were lined with old concrete, stained with what looked like water damage, or worse. The further down we went, the stronger the pressure in my head grew. Not pain exactly, more like static, filling my brain, fuzzing the edges of my thoughts. At the bottom was a narrow corridor, lit only by occasional strips of yellowed bulbs behind thick glass. No windows, no exit signs. Just another door older than the last with faded letters above it. Designated Safety Zone, Sublevel 3. We entered. The room beyond was massive. Some kind of forgotten shelter, filled with rows of empty metal bunks, storage crates, and old equipment covered in tarps. It was freezing and completely silent until the door sealed shut behind us. We all spun around as it locked with a hiss, followed by a thud deep within the wall. Some ancient mechanism snapping into place. A red light clicked on above the door. Then another announcement echoed from hidden speakers in the ceiling. Containment measures active. Remain calm. That's when it truly hit me. This wasn't about keeping something out. It was about keeping us in. The air in the shelter felt wrong. It was heavy, thick, like we were breathing the same recycled breath of people who died down here decades ago. Every surface was coated in a thin layer of dust, undisturbed, untouched, as if no one had entered this place in years until now. We didn't speak. There was nothing to say. The old fluorescent lights buzzed weakly above us, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Some students sat on the bunks. Others walked in slow circles, trying to stay calm. I leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of it. Why lead us here? Why trap us? That's when the sound started again. Not from the hallway we came through, but from inside the shelter. A dull scrape, something being dragged across the floor. Slow, deliberate, then silence. I scanned the room. No one else had moved, but they'd heard it too. I could see it in their eyes. That wide, distant stare people get when they're trying to pretend they didn't just hear something impossible. We all turned toward the back of the shelter, where the storage crates were stacked high and the light barely reached. No one wanted to go look. I don't blame them. I didn't either. But that same student who opened the classroom door earlier, he started walking toward the sound. I'll never forget how quietly he moved, like he knew something we didn't. He rounded the crates, disappeared behind them. 10 seconds passed, then 20, then the scream. We bolted. Everyone ran to the far side of the shelter, clustering together in a panic, but no one dared to leave. The door we came through was still locked. There was nowhere else to go. The scream had been cut short, choked off mid-breath. I wanted to believe it wasn't real. Maybe he slipped. Maybe he fell. But then he came back. Or something wearing him did. I didn't see it clearly. Just a silhouette stepping around the crates. Wrong proportions. Moving in a way no person should move. Slow, but with a kind of twitchy precision. And it watched us. I swear it watched us, even though its face was all shadows. We backed into a corner. One girl started sobbing. Another tried to scream, but nothing came out. I was shaking so hard I couldn't even stand. The figure moved closer. And then, without warning, the lights flickered and went out. Total darkness. No sound. Just heartbeats and shallow breathing. I don't know how long we stayed like that. A minute? 5? 10? Then the lights came back. The figure was gone. So was the student. But in his place, on the concrete floor, was a single old-school ID card. Cracked, dusty, and decades out of date. It wasn't his. It belonged to someone who'd supposedly disappeared during a lockdown drill in 1978. And just like that, I realized what this all was. We hadn't been taken somewhere safe. We'd been added to something. Something that had been happening a long time. And it was still happening now. After that night, something changed in all of us. We stopped waiting for rescue. Stopped hoping the door would open again. We just existed down there. Too scared to sleep. Too afraid to move too far from each other. The lights stayed on, but dimmer, like the power was running out. And the air, it was different now. Warmer, but suffocating. I kept feeling like something was breathing just behind my neck. Every few minutes, I'd turn around, but nothing was ever there. At least nothing I could see. Time started slipping. There were no clocks, no windows. I remember counting the minutes in my head, but somewhere around hour 8, or maybe it was 12, I lost track. Some people cried. Some just stared at the floor, unblinking. A couple tried to force open the door, pounding on it until their fists bled. It didn't budge. Then came the second disappearance. One of the girls, quiet, short, brown hair. She'd stayed near the back of the room, sitting alone on a bunk. No one noticed she was gone at first. Her things were still there, backpack, shoes, even her coat. But she was just gone, like she evaporated. We called her name, looked under bunks, behind crates. Nothing. Then we saw it. A trail of dusty footprints, bare feet, small, leading from her bunk directly into the solid concrete wall. I know how that sounds. I wouldn't believe it either, but I saw it with my own eyes. The prints stopped at the wall. They didn't turn around. No smudges, no drag marks, just gone. Something was taking us, one by one, and no matter how many safety drills or protocols we'd been taught, none of it mattered now. This was never about a shooter, or a fire, or even an intruder. This was about them, the ones who never left. Kids, staff, people who went missing during lockdowns that were later dismissed as false alarms, gas leaks, power failures. You've seen the stories online. Urban legends. But they're real. They've always been real. This shelter, this safe zone, it wasn't built to protect us. It was built to feed them. And we were the latest delivery. I started losing my grip on reality around that point. I think we all did. I began hearing voices, soft whispers echoing in the vents, like children laughing, but warped, slowed down. Someone kept humming a lullaby I'd never heard before, and it echoed even when the room was silent. Then, just when I thought we were done, the door opened. No sound, no announcement, just that same slow hiss, that soft metallic click. And the hallway outside was back. Normal, clean, well lit, like none of it had ever happened. Like we'd only been gone a minute. Except there were only 8 of us left. We didn't ask questions. We ran. We didn't speak on the way out. No one dared. We walked through the empty halls of the school like ghosts. Afraid to touch anything. Afraid to breathe too loudly. It was daylight outside. Normal. Like everything was fine. But time had passed. Not hours, days. For, to be exact, they found us standing in the parking lot, dazed, shaking, covered in dust. We were questioned. Medical teams ran tests. Parents cried. Everyone thought it was some sort of psychological breakdown. They told the media it was a communications failure during an emergency lockdown drill. A glitch, a scheduling error. But 8 of us knew the truth. We remembered the sounds, the disappearances, the feeling of being watched, of being chosen. The others, the ones who vanished, were written off as missing. Some had their photos posted in the local news. Some didn't. A couple were quietly removed from the school's records, like they were never there at all. And no one ever reopened that shelter again. But here's the thing, it's still there, beneath the school, sealed off now. But I know it's not empty. Sometimes, late at night, I hear things in my dreams. That humming, that laugh, that slow dragging sound across concrete. It never really left me, and I'm pretty sure it never will. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because this wasn't some haunted house story, or a messed up prank, or a psychological episode. This was real. If your school has one of those old Cold War-era shelters, if your lockdown drills sometimes take you into places that feel forgotten, too quiet, too still, pay attention. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, don't ignore it. There are things buried under schools that were never meant to be uncovered. And there are things waiting. They've waited before. They'll wait again. And next time, it might be you they choose.